Welcome to Cash and Liability Mastery. This is part 2, Understanding Your Cash Flow. At National Institute of Financial Education, we recommend starting your financial journey focusing on the 3 buckets of cash flow. The buckets are your 30-day regular cash flow buckets. Generally in a checking account, this is where all of your income and expenses are flowing in and out of. Your 90-day bucket should be whatever you have decided your monthly expenses are. There should be at least 3 months worth in this, generally in a savings account, somewhere that it's safe, but you have fairly easy access to it if you needed it. And then once that is full, then you can flow into starting to invest using your 90-day bucket. These buckets are critical to understanding the psychology of investing. The mindset of how you manage that first 30-day bucket has a huge impact on your ability to create wealth. Let's look at the buckets themselves and how they work. It costs money to live, so it's important to know your numbers. What does it cost you on a monthly basis to live indoors, to eat, to travel? So in our example, we will say that costs $4,000 a month. The first thing we need to know is that third bucket doesn't matter right now. That second bucket will need $12,000. This bucket should always be 3 times your current monthly expenses, and there's a reason for that. If you lose a job on average, it takes around 2 to 3 months to find a new job. The first step is to fill this bucket. The 30-day bucket is the cash flow bucket, and most people live lives of cash flow. They're mainly only focused on what is going on in their finances right now, not looking 5, 15, or 30 years down the road. Let's say your income is $4,500 a month in after-tax dollars that come to you as your cash flow. This is going into your checking account where monthly expenses are going out of. The $500 that's left over should go to the second bucket, savings bucket, anytime that bucket isn't full. This is an incredibly simple system and process, but it shows where a major problem can be for wealth creation. If you can never fill up the second bucket, then we know that there's a cash flow problem in the first bucket. At that point, you have 2 options: make more or spend less. Once cash flow is corrected, the excess each month should be transferred into the savings bucket, number 2. That should be done each month until you have your target in there to equal 3 months of expenses. The second bucket will give you a level of comfort that should something happen to stop your cash flow, you have 3 months of cushion, so you won't have to tap into credit cards if you fall on hard times. If you do draw from the second bucket, replenishing it will always be priority when cash flow resumes. If you are investing before you have that emergency fund, you're putting the cart before the horse. That even goes for making contributions to employer retirement plans. If you can't access that money and you have an emergency that you end up running up credit card debt, that could set back your money goals. A retirement plan has the possibility of acting as the second bucket, but it's extremely important to know the rules of your plan. And it's important to know that before you need it. Once the yellow bucket is full, excess cash flow is always going into the red bucket, to your future. The same applies if you get an inheritance or a bonus at work. As long as the yellow bucket is full, the money goes into the red bucket. This is the bucket where your money can start making money for you and reducing your burden on the first bucket, because at some point in time, you may not want to work as hard as you do today. This is really simple, but it's not easy. Even though you might prefer the donut, you have to make the right choice for you at a particular moment. And that may mean spending less today or starting to learn and think differently about your cash flow. But we have to master cash flow. Our entire wealth lives are cash flow oriented. The money we save for the future is so at some point we can turn that money back into cash flow. Most of the things we are going to discuss are really simple, but they may not be easy because they may take a new behavior or a new way of thinking about your relationship with money. Parkinson was a British economist, and he came up with this little pamphlet he put together that was full of Parkinson's laws. And part of these are so impactful because they really do affect us in everyday lives that we don't even realize. 1, expenses rise to equal income. How often has it been that you get a raise and you think, woohoo, now I can finally start saving? But next thing you know, 6 months later, you haven't saved anything and you think, well, where in the world did that go? I know I had extra money. Well, a lot of that is because of law number 2. A luxury once enjoyed becomes a necessity. So think about it this way. When you weren't making as much, Starbucks was a treat. So every once in a while you would go to Starbucks and get your super duper latte. But suddenly, you got that raise and you pass it every day and darn it, you deserve it. So next thing you know, you're getting a coffee every single day. And before you know it, you're spending $100 a month on coffee. So this last one isn't necessarily a financial law per se, but it does tend to come into play here. Work expands to meet the time envelope allowed. So if you are given 30 days to do a job, you're probably going to take 30 days to do it. If you're only given a week to do it, it probably gets done in a week. So that's something to keep in mind as you're trying to decide of what you're going to do as far as if your cash flows aren't quite meeting your needs and you need to do something different. Maybe a little bit of looking at your time envelope comes into play there. So these are definitely something to keep in mind all the time. In part 1, we talked about your money story. This goes along into that too. What are your behaviors? In order to help you on your wealth accumulation journey, Knife has partnered with Saveology. Through this relationship, you can get a free Saveology account to help you strategize and track your financial goals. I'm hoping you'll join me for the other segments of this presentation. And if you have any questions or if you'd like a Saveology account, please feel free to contact me. Thanks for listening.